Imagine that you are me and you get comments like this, and you're just trying to sort out other people's perceptions of you when it comes to ethnicity and all these DNA test results. Here's a comment I got today. I made a video called My Heritage, What Does a Spanish Person Look Like versus Italian. Cynthia Santavina, Cynthia, left me this comment. Quote, he, talking about me, he looks Mexican and not Spaniard. A real Spaniard would easily pass for an Anglo or basic American, end quote. All right, well, help me understand that perception. Let me process that. So I look Mexican, which my grandmother was. She was more on, according to everybody in her family's DNA test results, she would have been arguably 80% Native American and only 20% European, specifically Spanish. So I favor, and even My Heritage DNA, I gotta give it credit. I mean, My Heritage DNA test basically says I'm about a third Spanish and nearly a quarter Native American. Now, I understand mathematically that can't make sense because my mom, only half of her DNA would have came from Mexico. But I understand these are projections and estimates and all that sort of thing. And especially if we're going along with this theory, with not most people probably wouldn't buy into. One of my theories is that your DNA test results often serve as a reflection of your physical traits. So according to that, you're looking at a guy who in reality looks about a third Spanish, about a quarter Native American, and then the rest would pretty much be Northern European. That's what you're actually looking at. But let me sort this out again. He looks Mexican and not Spaniard. A real Spaniard would easily pass for an Anglo or basic American. Now, I guess basic American probably is going to be someone who looks like a Northern European mix. So that's saying that the real Spanish people, they look like what most people perceive as white people. When we think of Europeans, we tend to think of these white people. To put in context for me, when I think of a basic white person in Europe, who would I think of? Let me think of a nation that just comes to mind. It's just a general white person. I would think of someone who's German. There we go. Is that middle of the road enough? Someone, when I think of people who are German, in Germany, I would think of that your basic white person. In my mind, that's what I think. But the person who left this comment is saying that I specifically do not look Spanish. I specifically look Mexican. You know, what's interesting is, I run 2 different YouTube channels. And I've talked about this on both channels. And people can't really make up their mind on whether they think that I look Mexican. I think a lot of people don't think I look, quote, full Mexican. But when it comes down to it, here's a great person to compare me to. The comedian Louis C.K. He basically has the same DNA as I do. He had a grandparent who moved from Hungary, who was Jewish, and apparently that was the case with my grandparents coming from Italy, okay? And then they married someone who was Mexican. Okay, that's one set of parents. And then the other set of parents was your typical Northern European background there. So Louis C.K. has a very similar DNA background as I do. Yet I look very different from Louis C.K., don't I? He has much lighter skin. He's what we consider ginger. But yet he has brothers that I've seen in real life, and they would look more like I do. So it is interesting to understand what a Mexican looks like. And of course, I've made this point so many times. When I'm saying Mexican, I'm never talking about nationality here. I'm talking about the predicted general ethnic mix. I totally understand that for generations there have been Chinese people living in Mexico, and they're Mexicans, nationality-wise. But as far as someone, quote, looking Mexican, that is interesting that that person who left that comment doesn't even really see the Spanish, despite, according to my Heritage DNA test results, the Spanish is going to be a little bit higher than the Native American. Which goes back to another video I've made where I've said people tend to see in me what they are, what they either see in themselves or what they don't see in themselves. They tend to size me up accordingly. So I think that's interesting. I love hearing people's perspectives on what they think. But let's close on that note, and in the comments, let's talk more about that. Does anybody agree with this perspective that Spanish people should be seen more as Anglo or resemble Americans more, but I just have too much of that specific Mexican or Native American look to pass as your typical Spaniard? I can't know the answer to that question. I live in the United States. My perception is completely off from people, especially who live in Spain and Europe. So let's answer this according to this comment. Let's sort this out. I guess there's no right answer. Whatever my answer is, it's definitely not right. So what do you have to say right here?